How do organisms reproduce? First, to begin with, let us see, why do organisms reproduce? What is the need for organisms to reproduce? We need to remember that reproduction is not essential for life. If an individual does not reproduce, it doesn't mean that an individual will die. In the last chapter of life processes, we learned certain processes like nutrition. They were essential processes. Nutrition, circulation, respiration, excretion, these were all essential life processes. If these life processes cease or stop, the individual can no longer live. Reproduction does not come under life processes. It is not essential for organisms to reproduce in order to live. Then why do organisms reproduce? Another point to be noted is reproduction requires a large amount of energy. Then why do organisms spend so much of energy to reproduce? The second point, we have said that reproduction is not necessary to maintain life of an individual. So why do individuals or why do organisms reproduce? To answer these questions, let us imagine what would happen if organisms do not reproduce. If we have a population of, say, elephants, and if they were not to reproduce, they are mortal, they would die, and eventually the species would be no more and they would get extinct. So animals have to reproduce to ensure the continuity of life or species. If there was no reproduction, there would be no life on earth. Another thing is, reproduction leads to evolution, and evolution results in diversity of life. We will learn about this point in the next chapter. So these are the two main aims of reproduction: to ensure the continuity of life or species on earth, and it plays an important role in evolution. So if we were to define reproduction, we would define it as a process by which an organism produces new individuals similar to themselves. To understand reproduction, we first must know about the DNA. This is a very important molecule. It is called the master molecule. Why is it called a master molecule? What is its role in reproduction? That's exactly what we're going to learn now. To understand this, look at the picture in the first picture. Here we have girls having different types of hair. This is wavy hair. This girl has got curly hair. This is coiled hair, which is even more curly. Or sometimes you may have girls who've got absolutely straight hair. Now, this difference in hair is because each of them have got a different protein. Their hair is made up of different proteins, and hence they have different types of hair. When we come to eyes too, we see people have different types of eyes. You may have the brown eyes, or you may have the blue eyes, or sometimes the green eyes. And this difference in eyes is because the iris of each person is made up of protein that is different. In this case, the iris is made up of a blue protein. In this case, the iris is made up of a green protein. And here, the iris is made up of a brown protein. We see the same thing in skin color. We see that people have got different skin color, and this is because the protein present in their skin is different. The next question you would ask, why is it that different people have different proteins in their hair? Why is it that different people have different proteins in their iris? This is all controlled by the DNA. The DNA, or the deoxyribonucleic acid, it governs the making of proteins. It directs the making of proteins. The type of proteins that we have is all governed by our DNA. If the DNA is altered, the protein also is altered. So now we have seen that the DNA is the information source for making proteins. If the DNA is altered, the information is changed and different proteins will be made. Different proteins will eventually lead to altered body design. To summarize the slide, we know that DNA is called the master molecule. It stores the blueprint of our body. It stores all the characteristics of our body. It governs the making of our body. If we have certain characteristics in our body, like the type of hair, there are about 40,000 characteristics in our body, the type of hair, the skin color, maybe even certain diseases like heart disease and all are controlled by our DNA. So the DNA is a short form of deoxyribonucleic acid. It looks like a twisted ladder. It's made up of molecules that looks like a twisted ladder. And where is this DNA present? Here we have a diagram to show where it is present. We have the cell, and in the cell there is a nucleus. Inside the nucleus we have this chromatin network, and this chromatin network in a dividing cell forms the chromosomes, rod-shaped chromosomes, and the DNA is a part of this chromosome. So if you were to magnify this chromosome, you will find the DNA. So we have learned that the DNA is the blueprint of our body. It carries the design of our body, and during reproduction, individuals produce other individuals similar to with similar characters, means having the same body design. The parent will produce an offspring which have a similar design. So the design of the parent is the same as the design of the offspring. It's similar, not exactly same, but it is similar. Hence, it's easy to understand that for reproduction, the first step would be the replication or the copying of the DNA. So we can say the basic event in reproduction is the creation of a DNA copy. This is how the replication of a DNA takes place just before reproduction. Here is the original strand. The original strands then separate out, forming the new strands. And then the strands then cut off and giving rise to a copy of the DNA. But however, the DNA cannot live on its own. It has to live in a cell. So along with the formation of a new strand, a new cell is also produced to house the new DNA. So in this picture you can see here there's a DNA, and the DNA now makes a copy of itself, and then a new cell is formed, new cellular apparatus is formed, and the DNA is now housed in this new cellular apparatus. DNA copying is accompanied by a creation of an additional cell. After the formation of a new cell, the DNA copies separate, each with its own cellular apparatus. During the copying of the DNA, there are always certain mistakes. The DNA is a very long molecule, and as it is being copied, there are certain variations. There is never an exact copy of a DNA made. So we see here that the copies made during DNA are not exact copies. And the reason is no biochemical reaction is absolutely reliable. Every biochemical reaction is different. It's not identical. So the new DNA that is made will never be identical to its parent DNA. There will always be certain differences. The process of copying the DNA will have variations each time. The copy will always be a little different from its parent. So DNA copies generated will be similar but not identical. So hence if we have the parent DNA here, suppose this strand is a parent DNA, you will find the DNA of the offspring is not identical. They may have a little differences. So would you expect the body design of the parent to be identical to the offspring? No. Since there is a difference in DNA, the body design also will be different. Hence there is a difference between the body design of a parent and a offspring. This is the DNA of a parent and this is of the offspring. And during the copying, there is always some difference which are called variations. The importance of variations. Now variations are mistakes made in the DNA copying. So why should they be important? Why are they important? Let us understand this. Now populations of organisms always fill a well-defined place or a niche in the ecosystem. Like you see the polar bear, it lives in the Arctic. It obtains all its food and requirements from the Arctic region. If you go to take an example of a lion, it gets all its requirements from that niche, from that area of that ecosystem. So every body design is adapted to that niche to help the organism to get what they require from their surrounding. Now, due to the similar or consistency of the DNA structure, the body design of a population remains unchanged. And because the body design remains unchanged, the organisms continue to live in a niche. This consistency of body design helps the animal to occupy that particular niche for a very long time. So reproduction is therefore linked to stability of population of a species. In DNA copying, the DNA remains almost same, not identical. Hence the body design in a population remains the same and the population can hence live in a particular niche. Now what would happen if this niches changed or underwent a change? The niches can change because of reasons beyond the control of the organisms. And the change in niches could be like the temperature of the earth would go up, or the water level in that area would increase, or there would be a meteorite hit. So there was a change in the niche. If the niche were drastically altered, the population would be wiped out. However, due to variation, the body designs of some individuals would be different and adaptable to the new surroundings. Some individuals would have different body designs because of variation, and because of this different body designs, they may find it easy to adapt to the new surroundings. If the body designs remain the same in a population, there would be no chance for the individual to survive if there was a change in their niche. But because body designs slowly keep changing, if there is a change in the niche, this new body design would help the organisms to adapt to this new niche. Such individuals with favorable variations will have a survival advantage. Now this I have taken up from your textbook. Thus we see if there were population of bacteria living in temperate waters, and if the water temperature were to be increased by global warming, most of this bacteria would die because their niche has changed, the temperatures increase, the waters have become warmer. So they may find it difficult to live in such waters. But a few variants resistant to heat, which means there may be some bacteria, because of variation, they would now be able to withstand higher temperatures, would survive and grow further. Variation is useful for the survival of a species over time. So variation is very important for a species to adapt to a changing niche.